Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. The band is back together. Jeremy Werner, Joey Wagner, after a week off for myself in hot and sweaty Disney down in Orlando. Joey, it's good to be back. We got a lot to talk about. I know it's kind of a slower time of year, which, sometimes might drive us insane because we want content. We love this job and we want to give people the content, but it is nice to slow down a little bit, but there are some happenings going on.
There are. It's like big picture stuff, right? You picked a good week to walk 1,000 miles around Disney World.
Which I would walk 500.
Do you think, how many you think total all week?
I can look at my email, Joey. Last week, because I got like
Fitbit emailing you.
I got the Fitbit here, and they give me a weekly progress report. I took 33,000 more steps than usual last week. In total, 47 miles I walked.
Oh, God, what a nightmare.
That's 1,500 steps. And most of it, Joey, was in 95-degree, 90% humidity. But it was good. A lot of memories made. The kids loved swimming. They liked being in the pool most of the time, even more so than Disney and the expensive tickets it is there. But it was a good time, man. But I'm glad to be back. I've never been so glad to come home to 60-degree weather the few couple weeks we actually get this kind of weather.
Yeah, I was home the last 2 weekends, and the first weekend, my buddy who's got the pool, I said he's my best friend, but really it's just a pool is why we go there. It's getting the lining in it. The first weekend I was there, and we said, next weekend it'll be open. Well, 60 degrees. It's miserable. I mean, obviously didn't get in. I can't figure it out.
No, this is my time to shine with my ginger skin and 50 to 70. That's exactly my kind of wheelhouse. But Joey, let's hit on a lot of topics that have happened over the last week. Some of these are rules with the NCAA and NIL in the state that I think are really interesting and really important for fans of Illinois to understand and for us to talk about a little bit the impact. We get 2 commitments for Illinois football, 1 commitment to a different Big Ten rival that certainly hurts Illinois. But I think everyone's kind of on pins and needles to see what Illinois basketball does in the transfer portal. And there's no news there yet, right? Except that Matthew Meyer, the Baylor transfer, is coming back to college. North Carolina has a lot of buzz there. The fit makes sense after what Brady Manick did there. And Pete Nance is still going through the draft process, seemed to have a pretty good G League, elite camp there. Really good shooter. I can see him fitting in the NBA pretty well. So we're just kind of sitting here waiting to see what happens. But Illinois seems to be patient throughout this, that, hey, we're going to go for these really, really good players, and Nance and Meyer, guys who have NBA aspirations, rather than just taking a body, right? Taking somebody who can play to 12, 15 minutes. But at some point you wonder if Meyer and Nance are both off the board, what the options are for Illinois. Yeah,
that's kind of the big gamble you have when you play chess at the adult table, right? I mean, you're trying to maintain in this upper level of college basketball, and what that requires patience, and it requires probably a plan B and a plan C. And I don't know that coaches are exactly eager to share plan B and C, because plan A is what you want, but you would think they have contingency plans. Otherwise, it's tough. I mean, you have to. And we also have to acknowledge, Jeremy, there's going to be a wave of people here in the next week pulling out of the NBA draft. I mean, you started to see it happen now, but it's got to happen by June 1st. There's just too many humans, not enough draft picks. You're going to see a wave come out. We've heard, obviously Nance and Meyer make the sense. You would have to think they've got other pieces in play that they're ready to move on or ready to push on, try to do something, because as much as you want to put your eggs in one basket, you do have to be aware that might not fill up.
Yeah. And listen, Joey, I'll say, in my opinion, I think it makes sense to go and be patient and go for these top options. I think that's where Illinois basketball is as a program. It's not about just making an NCAA tournament now. It's about winning Big Ten championships. It's about getting to the second weekend, which obviously they haven't since 2005. And these are the kind of players that can push you into that level. And let's be honest, like some of these, it'll be interesting to see if some of these NBA draft names enter the portal and then get immediate eligibility. Guys that aren't in the portal by now are supposed to sit out a year, but Brad Underwood and other coaches have questioned whether that'll be the case or whether the NCAA will give those guys waivers, just because that June 1st deadline to get out of the draft and the May 1st deadline to get into the portal don't line up. So maybe the NCAA makes an exception for those guys, but I still think you can find a body, right? A guy who can give you 10 to 15 minutes, maybe. I thought that guy could have been Benjamin Bosmans-Verdonk. And I think his recruitment, maybe him going at a higher level and having interest from a higher level of programs, shows you what the market is like for post players and front court players. I don't think it was a particularly strong one this year when it comes to the portal and front court options, but Illinois has decided to go all out after the Nance, Meyer kind of guys. And I don't blame them for that, because those are guys that can completely change things for you. If you don't land one of those guys, you're not going to land somebody as impactful, but you can add somebody to add to your rotation. I think, Joey, what would happen if they don't get Nance or Meyer is Luke Goody's going to play a bigger role. Ty Rodgers is going to play a bigger role, and this team's going to play a lot smaller. Like Coleman Hawkins and Dane Danger are probably going to be your primary fives, and you're going to be at a disadvantage against Hunter Dickinson and Zach Edey. Not that you wouldn't if you added Meyer and Nance. You're going to be at a disadvantage there, and you got to find a way to make up for it in other ways. And mostly that would be on the wing and in the backcourt. Yeah,
I still don't know how comfortable I would be going in with the 5 rotation as it is right now. And that's not we don't know what Dane Danger looks like as a college basketball player. Coleman Hawkins can do it, and I've long championed him at the 5, but I think you want to have as many more options and maybe just depth. You've got to have depth there, and right now that lacks. And that can be solved in the portal. And if you don't get one of the 2 guys, we don't know how that's going to shake out. The thing about transfers, Jeremy, they don't care about retweets. They don't care about likes. They don't care about all of this. They probably, especially when they've been, all in, quote unquote, on the NBA draft, you don't want to give the impression that you're not all in on that. So you're not going to go and do this, that, and the other. So it's quieter. It's much quieter on how that shakes out, and it's a timely process. But I do think you need another big man somewhere down the line, and whether that's a high impact guy like a Nance, or it's a guy who can back up a Dane Danger, who can, give Coleman Hawkins more minutes at the 4. I mean, I think that's your equation, but it's hard for me to think you don't need another body there.
Yeah. See if they can find one, because would you rather
recruiting right now?
But would you rather add a 6'8" guy that can give you 15 minutes, or just a big body who you don't know if he's going to make an impact? I'd probably go with the 4 and be undersized, at the 5 and deal with that and play like Houston did, right? Like Houston found a way to Kofi Coburn got his, but to nullify everybody else. So I do think Brad Underwood's kind of playing with that we might not match up well individually one-on-one against Hunter Dickinson and Zach Edey, but most teams don't. But you know what? Michigan and Purdue didn't make the Final Four last year because other teams can give them matchup issues elsewhere. And I think that's kind of what Illinois is looking for. So it'll be interesting. They still got a couple scholarships left here. I would imagine they do want to fill one, Joey. But yeah, as you said, until Nance and Meyer kind of make these decisions, I don't think they're gonna be pushing for another name unless they're told they're out.
Yeah, and to your point about matching up against Edey and Dickinson, you only have to do that probably 6 times a year max, right? If you get 2 each in the regular season, and maybe you see the Big Ten tournament, you probably run your risk there, right? You probably say, okay, well, you only got to see them maybe this many times. Do you want to craft your roster to seeing 2 guys like that? And certainly there are more traditional post players, but you can also look and see that you can get it done. That Houston film's probably been playing quite a bit around the coach, not because they're frustrated that it ended and how it ended, but I think there's a lot of, could we do that next year ability on that Houston team, and you probably want to see how they go about doing those things.
Yeah, and it's just not Houston, right? Like Villanova was like there's so many teams that just had that kind of versatility that I think Illinois is certainly looking for. All right, Joey, Illinois football gets a few commitments on the board. Let's start first with the transfer, a guy who can make an immediate impact, and Illinois is counting on to make an immediate impact. they finally addressed wide receiver via the transfer portal, and it's Jonah Morris. A familiar name if you've followed recruiting for a while, because 7 years ago, I think, or 6 years ago, he signed with Indiana. But he ends up going to Akron, his hometown, has a solid season there, but then transfers to Northern Colorado. And now he's transferring to Illinois for his Tommy Boy season, his 7th season in college football. Joey, you talked with Jonah Morris. He's a big guy, 6'4", 200 pounds, physical, athletic, maybe not straight line fastest, but hasn't been all that healthy. And, he's had some family issues crop up that have kind of, sidetracked his career at times. But what do you think of the addition of Jonah Morris?
I understand if you look at his college production on paper and say, how much do you put into this? How much can you rely on him? Because it's just outside of the 2018 season at Akron, it's really not been there to the level that you would hope if you're looking at a true outside guy who's going to make an impact. But he's what they don't have in terms of skill wise. We don't know how it's all going to shake out on the field, but he is a big guy. That matters. You don't really have that. I would still argue you don't really have a proven go up and get it receiver, because he's not exactly proven. But a little background on his path here: committed to Indiana, took a red shirt his true freshman year. He played primarily on special teams as a redshirt freshman. His uncle was diagnosed and has since beaten cancer. It was important for him to move closer to home. He said he had options coming out of Indiana. Akron made sense. It was in his hometown. He really got to be there. That was really important for him to be around his family. He plays a pretty good 2018 season. I mean, in terms of, you could start to see it. If you're looking at a redshirt sophomore, you can start to see what he puts together. First day, or first week, I should say, of training camp 2019, tears his ACL. He's out for the season. Remember, there was a coach, Illinois hosted Akron that year, coaching change coming in. He stayed at Akron, to rehab this. Ultimately sat out the 2020 season. Akron played 6 games. He wanted to continue to rehab his knee, enters the portal, goes to Northern Colorado. Really likes, I think Ed McCaffrey is their head coach there, really liked kind of his background, understandably so. He does think, Northern Colorado is kind of on the up, but it takes time. Jonah Morris doesn't have time in college. So he enters the portal again, ends up at Illinois. I don't know what all that means, but that's kind of, it's not like he just fizzled here and fizzled there. There's a reason, and that's why we talk to these guys, is to understand the reason behind all of this. And if it works, it works. And it's kind of his commitment is kind of embodies maybe how Illinois is approaching this transfer market. I have no idea if it's going to work. It's not a fun answer. I have no earthly idea. If you're telling me you do, outside of the Smith Center, I'm probably going to say I don't believe you. But it's a gamble, but maybe it works.
Yeah, if you want optimism, he's a former top 400 prospect that seemed to be on the up at Akron. He had a really good first season at Akron. I think 26 catches, 380 yards, a couple touchdowns. And it seemed like he was going to be a focal point of that offense. And all of a sudden, the injury happens and COVID happens, and then he transfers and wasn't in a very good program. Ed McCaffrey, I can understand why a wide receiver would want to go play for a former great wide receiver in the NFL from the Denver Broncos days, won a couple of Super Bowls, but that just wasn't a team that, he could succeed with. So it's interesting. He comes here. I do think Brett Bielema cares about a player's story. I think we've seen that with some guys. Like I think Tommy DeVito's confidence and swagger really, really resonates him. Artur Sikowski, the way he goes about his business, I think that kind of resonates with Brett Bielema. But then you see a guy like Terrell Jennings, the cornerback they're bringing in, who's never played at the FBS level, Joey, but he has a reason. He was a lacrosse player, was going to play lacrosse in college. Then all of a sudden he decides, I want to play football, but it was too late in the process. He goes JUCO, then he goes FCS level. Brett Bielema seems to like those. It's that whole tough, smart, dependable, and I think the hungry aspect of it. Now, he did that last year in the class, and it didn't work out all that well with the transfers. They didn't make as big of an impact as Illinois probably hoped. So I don't know if this class will make an impact. 24/7 just released their transfer portal rankings. They have a top 247. Illinois doesn't have any of those guys, right? So the headline grabbers, the guys Nebraska is getting right now, Illinois doesn't have any of those guys. But Brett Bielema seems to think they have something that Illinois needs. And my whole thing is I'll wait and see. I don't know if it's going to work out. I can't say it's not. I think you'd rather get guys that a bunch of other Power 5 programs are getting. But right now, this is where Illinois is going. But they need this class to make a bigger impact than last year. They need the 2 defensive linemen to elevate the group, because losing Rod Perry hurts, right? So you need T-Rod Edwards, you need Rashawn Wilkins to make an impact. And I think those are really 2 solid gets. You need Tommy DeVito to be better than Brandon Peters was, more consistent than Brandon Peters was. And now you need Jonah Morris to really help you at a position where you don't have enough talent, you don't have enough maturity or physicality. You need him, Brian Hightower, to play pretty well. Otherwise, you're counting on Patrick Bryant, Sean Miller, 2 guys that I think are talented enough to make an impact, but just haven't done it. They're really young at the Big Ten level. Hank Beatty's going to be in the mix, I would imagine. So you need somebody to help Isaiah Williams. So it's going to be interesting in 4 or 5 months, Joey, to look back and be like, oh, they can evaluate, right? They can evaluate these transfers, or man, they shot too low, or they weren't able to get higher impact guys.
Yeah, it feels like you can almost, and I'm not saying this happens, but you can almost envision them watching the film as a coaching staff to say, okay, so-and-so is this away from being a really impactful player. And we believe we can get him to do that, to take him to that level. If they believe in themselves as coaches, they should. They've got a track record of success. They believe that they can, this is my read of it at least, is they believe that they can make that development. That Brett said they're a developmental program. Now that in our minds comes back to like, okay, high school, you develop, go through the whole thing. And then by year 2 or whatever the case may be, every timeline's different. But it's interesting when you look at transfers who have 1 year, in the case of Jonah Morris, who have, the time is just not there. Tommy DeVito, the time is just not there. And they must believe that they can get them to that level. But you're right. You need a deeper impact. Last year, if you want to look at transfers, the biggest impact was Jack Badovanak, who, if you want to go back to stories, kind of an undersized guy, went to Colgate, played pretty well, comes up, makes the adjustment. Art Stakowski, you needed him. You ended up needing the guy.
And he was a fine backup quarterback. He just, with the injury, apparently, wasn't good enough to be the impactful starter that you needed. We'll see if he gets healthy, if he can push Tommy DeVito, but that was a solid addition, right?
Yeah. CJ Hart looks good.
Yeah. CJ Hart looked good. The 3 quarters we saw, right?
That's the caveat there. But otherwise, it just wasn't the most impactful class. Jafar Armstrong, 1 year, Abe Simpson's that, right? Walked in, walked out. It was not walked out, but he was only here for a year. I mean, you didn't get the impact out of it.
Eddie Smith was probably the biggest name one, right, along with Jafar.
Prather Hudson had his role on special teams, and I don't know what the expectation realistically. I remember like a year ago trying to figure out what this was going to be, but it just wasn't the most impactful class. You need that where your roster is. More than anything, you need people who have done it, who have been in this position before, because you're kind of rapidly losing those guys to the eligibility thing. You're going to lose another slew of them next year. So I don't know, Jeremy. I mean, I understand maybe not everyone is going to buy into this plan. I get it. I understand the wanting to get the names, the proven, the battles for those. It's not where it is right now. And it might still work. No one's sitting here saying, nope, sorry, not it. We got to see it.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to mention is, Nebraska wholesaled this transfer thing because they have to, right? They have 15 transfers committed, but it
doesn't always work.
Yeah, they have to win. Like Illinois did that with Lovie Smith, obviously, and it worked for a little bit, for a month there, but didn't work long term for them. But Illinois didn't decide to go get 10 transfers, at least as of yet, right? They decided so far to get 6, and they decided to sign 22 high school kids, 2 JUCO kids to help build up the line as well. But just another interesting note. I'm not telling Illinois fans to be super excited about this transfer class. I got some skepticism of how big of an impact they will make, but this staff clearly is confident in their evaluation skills and in the fit. They seem to really care about the caliber of transfer, the makeup of the transfer, and to make sure that those guys aren't going to disrupt or be a detriment to the program, even if they are talented. So I guess, Joey, I'm just going to say, I'm interested to watch it. I'm interested to see if these guys exceed our expectations, because on paper, the transfer class, it's kind of like, oh, okay. Well, let's see.
Yeah. And look, you can play, good news. Let's say a couple of these guys do pan out in a meaningful way. Well, now you can go in the portal next year and say, okay, we had this guy who did X at, this school and wasn't really, getting looked at, and we got him here. I mean, it's a couple, part of the best case scenario. I guess the other best part is they produce.
What would make this a successful transfer class? If Tommy DeVito plays well. Right. I mean, if Tommy DeVito plays well, this is an A class, because that's what they need this upcoming year. Because I feel the defense should be solid, right? I don't know if it's going to have last year's numbers, but with Ryan Walters, with some of the talent they have back and some of the talent we know they can develop, because Lovie Smith did leave some talent on defense with Seth Coleman, Keith Randolph, Johnny Newton, things like that, Devin Witherspoon. I think
Barnes.
Yeah, Sidney Brown. Like, we can go on and on. Like, there's some talent that Lovie Smith left on defense, but there wasn't on offense, whether it's the offensive line with all those guys, fifth-year seniors gone, quarterback, obviously wide receiver outside of Isaiah Williams, clearly has been a weakness. So if Tommy DeVito and Barry Loney can combine to have a solid season and put together a solid offense, this transfer class is going to be an A, because if they get good to solid quarterback play, I think they'll be a bowl team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you can say that about almost any transfer class that brings in a quarterback. If the quarterback plays well, you're probably going to be in good shape, unless you're trotting out the Illinois defense of 3 or 4 years ago, where it didn't matter how many points. It didn't matter. Yeah, it didn't matter how many points AJ Bush and Reggie Corbin put up, and it was a lot, by the way. It doesn't matter. So yeah, it's a really good call, Jeremy. If Tommy DeVito plays well, and you just maybe one other guy is a rotational piece, whether that's a T-Raw Edwards or Rashawn Wilkins or Jonah Morris, Terrell Jennings, Dylan Davis. I don't really know how that's all going to look. He's a guy that I don't remember, something was going on where we were all kind of separated. I don't know how much we've gotten into him, Jeremy, but.
Dylan Davis is a kid who had Power 5 offers out of, the same high school as the Brown brothers, Chase and Sidney Brown. And he decided to go to Furman because he didn't feel like a big school would do well for him. Like he just thought at his stage in life, he was kind of doubting himself as a little bit as a football player, thought he could eventually play at that level. But after playing a Power 5 team last year, he played, thought he did okay, and that he could compete at that level. So he entered the transfer portal, wanted to play center rather than tackle. He played tackle at Furman, thought he needed to play interior to reach his potential and potentially, make it to the next level. But he's a guy who started 2 games at the FCS level. So is he going to be a guy to make an immediate impact? I think he'll give you depth at center. I think he'll give you competition at center. But he's a guy with 3 years of eligibility. So more long-term probably guy there. But again, another interesting story, interesting evaluation, because I think Illinois could have found, a Power 5 transfer to start at center right away. But they liked enough of what they saw from Alex Pihlstrom that they thought, hey, now we can just add maybe a long-term piece that we can develop. Again, that word develop, and give us maybe more of a long-term impact.
Yeah, and Jordan Slaughter would offer you some, ability there, we think. Josh Kreutz, Joey Oakley's coming in. Talking about center, am I good at these transitions? That's kind of a nice transition to TJ McMillan, the recruit they got out of Wheaton St. Francis, 3-star offensive lineman. He's the 3rd member of the class of 2023. And Illinois did I think a really good job of keeping a relationship, offering when it felt right for probably everybody, and closing that thing down, because TJ McMillan had some offers. And when you talk about offer lists, look at recency is something to pay attention to. Follow the offers, follow the visits. People were starting to come at this guy, and Illinois did a good job of getting in there, locking it down, and adding probably a true center to what they're going to do long term.
Yeah, Illinois offered TJ McMillan on May 13th, 2022. I saw him at the North Central camp back at last June. And, soon after that, he was receiving offers from Missouri, TCU. Previously, he'd gotten offers from Texas Tech, Penn State, Arizona State, Syracuse, right? So, he was getting big-time offers. Then Purdue offered earlier this month. Kansas State, Ole Miss offered earlier this month. But Illinois had been recruiting him. They had been developing a relationship with him. And then they offered him on May 13th. They're thinking, boy, that's late, because one thing this staff has done extremely well, Joey, is get in early on guys. Caden Fagan, it was really important to get in early. I think Malik Elzy, Jair Hill, some of the top 10 guys are going in on. But some guys have gotten in a little later. Damon Walters, a top 10 prospect, a safety out of Bolingbrook, and now TJ McMillan. But they developed a strong enough relationship. And I think McMillan didn't care about that stuff. He didn't care about posting an Illinois offer last year as opposed to this year. He cared about the fit. And he saw with Brett Bielema and Bart Miller, guys who have developed a lot of centers who have gone on the NFL, Travis Frederick being one of those. With Bielema, it's Frank Ragnow, right? Travis Swanson, a lot of NFL draft picks, and now Doug Kramer, who I thought had an even better year. I mean, he did well under Lovie Smith and all the coaches there, but I thought he had a great year this past year, and he's an NFL draft pick, even though, a little undersized, as we always like to say. TJ McMillan sees that and sees a really good fit in state, and they close. So a heck of a job for Illinois. I think this is a heck of a recruiting win. Top 20 in-state prospect. I think it was a feel-good one after missing out on a guy you felt good about in Roderick Pierce and him committing to Wisconsin. I think this is a big-time recruiting win and the exact kind of guy you want to get in state to build that offensive line, because this is the guy who's left the state. This is the guy who's gone to Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin to go play for those good programs. Bielema's got an offensive line identity, and you add a player like this who's a son of a coach, Bob McMillan, Arena Football League player, Arena Football League coach. I think he won some Arena Football League championships. Now he's his coach at St. Francis and Wheaton. So, he's going to play with intensity. He's extremely quick. I think you got a really good thing on the interior with Josh Kreutz, TJ McMillan, Dylan Davis, Joey Okla, Clayton Leonard. Like, there's some really good options where I think you're going to have, some long-term starters there and also potentially some team captains.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. First, are there royalties Frank Ragnow can get for every interior offensive lineman that Brett Bielema gets? That's a name that comes up a lot. Bielema is smart on social media, making sure it's known on his Twitter timeline that he coached Frank Ragnow and the opportunity presents itself. But yeah, man, this is a guy who gets out, who has gotten out time and time again. And I think when the recruiting process, everyone, us included at times, and there's reason to think this, it's not always be first for the sake of being first. You got to read what matters to the kids. And some kids, that certainly does matter, like to be the ones who gave them, like, I get it. That certainly matters.
Yeah, I will say it's always better for a program like Illinois to get in early. Usually.
Yeah.
Usually it is better.
Yeah. But the point with McMillan is Illinois was kind of in early on him. It's not like they just realized who this kid was May 13th. Right. Obviously, they had seen it, and we've talked about, and I know you've talked to Jeremy, guys who have said, oh, yeah, we've been talking for a while, and they just offered, and that doesn't always work. And maybe, in fact, more times than not, it doesn't work to not be out in front like that. But I think there is a process. I mean, I just think we got to kind of get over sometimes, okay, they offered May 13th. When did you know about this guy kind of deal? Because they've been doing their homework on some of this, and part of their job is to read the pressure points of a recruitment. And they must have read TJ McMillan's correctly enough to understand what worked, what didn't. That's a big win. I mean, I know we talked yesterday, Jeremy. That's kind of the biggest offensive line recruiting win, we think, of this staff. Yeah, you fought off some Power 5 offers, closed it down early. He was blowing up, relatively speaking, but didn't really ever let him fully blow up. There probably would have been more offers. I think we'd be foolish to say there wasn't going to be. So that was a good job getting in there, closing it down, and you're continuing this makeover on the offensive line. And I know we talked, there are 5 freshmen, incoming freshmen this summer in the class of 22 on the offensive line. There are 5 combined from the classes of 2018, 19, 20, and 21 still on the roster. You got to make it over. And by that, you got to get bodies. You got to get some good recruiting wins. And this is another one in that. This is now 6 prep offensive linemen in the last 2 classes. We don't expect that to be done. You're starting to see Brett realizes this is kind of his calling and hitting on it.
I also think it's good to have a guy from Chicagoland as you get ready to host all these official visitors. I think that's a really good thing to have, because you got Caden Fagan, more of a quiet reserve guy, but a big time name, headline get, 4-star kid, in the center of the state. You got Antoine Hayden, who's from St. Louis, plays at East St. Louis. So you got him that can help recruit those kids. And then all of a sudden you got a kid in Chicagoland that's on board. We think there's going to be some more from that area. Pat Farrell is one that I think they're sitting really in well from St. Rita, edge rusher. So we'll see if they can close on him. But I think that's a good thing to have more of these guys. And it'll be interesting to see if they can add more before those June visits really, really start. So I think it's a very important month coming up, and I think you feel better. Because I think Roderick Pierce, man, that's a tough loss. That was a really tough loss. And I don't know if there's anything Illinois could have done about it, because they recruited Roderick Pierce extremely well. I don't know if there's, a thing I would say that, you have to do other than close. They weren't able to close on him because Wisconsin came in with an offer. Ross Collegies, their defensive line coach, did a fantastic job. And they're a winning program with a great history of defense, one that Brett Bielema helped build and build upon after Barry Alvarez. And, they've done extremely well. Illinois is battling Wisconsin for Jamel Howard as well, kid out of Chicago. It's a really good defensive lineman. So Terrence Jameson and this Illinois staff need to land defensive linemen. I do think they'll get a couple, coming up here. But Roderick Pierce is a kid they had on campus 5-6 times, it felt like. And I thought they had a chance to close in the spring. They were unable to do so. And then Wisconsin swoops in and gets him. So I think getting McMillan makes you feel better about that, because Pierce was a tough loss at a position of need. But I think 3 top 20 in-state kids continues to show, Joey, that they're battling.
That's tough, man. That's tough. And
Jim London's pretty good at his job.
He is. Yeah. How many letters of recommendation do you think you could get Big Ten coaching staffs to send to whatever team wants to hire this guy?
Well, the Packers tried, man. Your Packers tried and they couldn't do it.
I know. You would think every coach in the Big Ten would say, please. Yeah. Well, great. Every glowing endorsement to get him out of their way. Right.
Yeah, I would imagine. All right, Joe, before we wrap up, let's talk about 2 big rule changes that could have a significant impact on college sports. And the first one I want to bring up is the NIL amendment for the state of Illinois. I just got off the phone not too long ago with Cam Cox, who's basically the NIL coordinator at Illinois, and talked about this. And Illinois certainly had input on this new legislation, or basically the amended legislation that allows, this is the headline, right? It allows these schools in the state to now facilitate NIL deals. So if student athlete comes to Illinois and says, hey, I would love to do an NIL deal, or a company comes to the school and says, hey, we'd like to approach a student athlete, or who do you think would be a good idea? Prior to this, Joey, Illinois basically had to say, we can't help you, right? Like they had to basically plead ignorance and say, we can't be involved because it was a state law. Meanwhile, there are other states where it's allowed, right? Like where you can facilitate deals and basically be the go-between. I don't think this changes a lot for the Kofi Coburns, Trent Frazier's of the world. If these guys were able to do it, they're able to do it in their home country, but Chase Sidney Brown, Isaiah Williams, whoever it is, those guys probably have agents, right? And most of those guys could have agents because agents are interested in getting in on Kofi Coburn and Trent Frazier's money, right? Like getting a cut of that. But for the softball players, baseball player, golfer, whatever it is, this certainly could make an impact, but it also just makes the process easier. It allows Illinois to give their input of telling a student athlete whether they think it's a good idea or not to do this. So this makes all the sense in the world. There are so many states, especially in the South, that are now passing this. And talking with Cam Cox, he said, it actually was a detriment to us because we were following what the NCAA rule was going to be, which is we cannot facilitate these deals. So us who are being proactive in passing these laws actually were at a disadvantage over the last couple of months because we couldn't facilitate those. So this is correcting it. And this is basically going to be the case across the country because, of course, the NCAA did nothing after the Alston case because they were spooked to do anything and be taken to court by student athletes. So I think it's a huge deal for Illinois just to have a level playing field. And I think it's a good thing for student athletes. I think they'll get more opportunities, especially maybe I don't want to say second tier, but the non-Kofis of the world. I think they'll get more opportunities because the school can help them set it up.
Yeah, it's hard. If you look at Illinois specifically, it's hard to gauge like the reality of NIL when you have a Kofi type of earning power, because that's just a different level of ball game. So like when you say second tier, I know I knew exactly what you mean, and it didn't mean it as a knock. You just meant in the not Kofi Coburns, and there's only a handful of Kofi Coburns.
I would include Sky Clark in that, right? Like Sky Clark has amazing NIL opportunity here. One, he's a great prospect. Two, he's playing for Illinois basketball. But he's got what? How many Instagram followers? Is it like 1 million or something like that? Like Coleman Hawkins obviously is going to be one of those guys. Maybe RJ Melendez can be one of those guys. But yeah, they're at a different level than most college student athletes.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the complaints that we heard kind of around last year when it all came up was, and let me just preface this by saying, obviously this matters in recruiting, period. Like, obviously this is important. Like, and that, so I don't want to act like I'm glossing over that. That's a big deal. But some of the complaints we heard were like, okay, we're supposed to be coaches and educators, and we're supposed to be at this institution where you learn this, and this. And now you have this big life-changing thing that sits in front of them. And the DIA, people at Illinois, people at schools had to say, good luck, man. I don't
figure it out, kid.
Yeah. And I know that's like, to a lot of people who hear this is like, okay, like, yeah, I get it. But obviously the attention is the impact it's going to have. But like, that is something that I know was frustrating to people is they wanted to be able to guide some of these kids through, hey, this is probably not the best long-term deal for you, or maybe you don't want to be associated here. Hey, you're probably not getting what you could get here. And all you had to do was say, hey, just file it in open doors and good luck out there. And that sucks when you're trying to help these kids. And I know that's small carrots to the big impact of this thing, but I know that mattered to people.
Yeah, this law also, it doesn't have any enforcement of this, but it encourages schools to provide financial literacy, brand management, and life skills programs for student athletes. So I know Illinois was certainly doing that, but that's in the language of the law. It also now defines a booster as a person or entity that is made within the past 5 years a financial contribution in an amount greater than $1,000 to an athletic department or booster organization of that athletics program. So NIL is interesting, man. I talked with Cam Cox today, and we're going to do a podcast with Cam within the next month or so, just about where NIL is a year into it. But it certainly is changed a lot, and certainly is a huge conversation. I don't think Illinois football is that into the NIL thing, just because, right? I mean, they don't have that star power. They aren't that program yet, but you see what USC is doing right now, like getting transfers there through millions of dollars in NIL deals. It is changing the landscape of college sports for sure. And the pay for play thing, is the NCAA actually going to enforce this? Because it certainly seems like that is becoming the case. Is that the worst thing in the world? No, but that's not what the NIL is supposed to be. It's supposed to be marketing opportunities, not a pay for play. But with the absence of any NCAA here, because they are spooked by the Austin case of read Brett Kavanaugh's opinion of what he said about the NCAA model. And they are scared that the whole thing could go tumbling down if they kind of enforce anything. But now it seems like the NCAA is going to try to enforce this, but I'm skeptical.
Yeah, good luck. And it feels like we're always saying, like, is the NCAA actually, and then fill in the blank with whatever you think would be logical on the other end. And the answer is generally no. And that's, again, you have all of these different states operating with different rules, different guidelines. Yeah, it's frustrating as hell if you're trying to recruit a kid, or you're trying to do this, you're trying to, get for your guys in your program already, and you can't do anything. But another school, and certainly a lot of these football players, a lot of basketball players have either grown up with each other, run into each other's camps, whatever the case may be. They're not oblivious to what's happening at other schools. They know, obviously the internet's right there. Like, you can follow if you care. And then everyone just operates differently. It's incredibly frustrating. It's not ideal. It's really not. And I don't know that it's going to get ideal, because the NCAA is terrified.
Yeah. So Jordan Addison, I feel great for that kid. Like, Pittsburgh was a superstar there, this past year, and he's going to get paid. It's reportedly millions, right? In NIL deals at USC. And reportedly turned down more money. I don't know if that's true or not, but I feel good for him. Like he's in the market, right? Yes, this is more like pro athletics. But did you read the report of what the Big Ten's going to make on its next deal? They're going to make $1 billion on this deal. And if they're going to add more college football playoff games because it makes them more money, man, guys like Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, whoever it is, Quinn Ewers, like, yeah, I don't fault those guys for making money. Stinks for Pitt, really stinks for Pitt. And maybe that can happen to Illinois at some point. But man, I can't fault these kids for making money, because for a lot of them, this could be life-changing money and they're worth it, right? Like we're finding that out, Joey. These guys are worth a lot of money.
Yeah, I would hate to sound like either one of us think that like we think NIL on the whole is a bad deal, because I'm with you. Get your money, man. Get the money, because
it's just got to be a level playing field. That's all. Right.
Right. Yeah. NIL on the wholes. I mean, I think a lot of people are all for, but it's just it's not regulated very well by the NCAA, and I think that's where, if you're trying to look at this, like maybe that's where the frustration would land. But get the money in the pockets, man. Heck yeah, right? There's no reason. I had a job in college.
What were you worth, Joey? Were you worth $2 million? Like
no, I wasn't worth a lot. But I had a job, and it paid for
about $7.50 an hour.
What was it? I don't know. I may have been in double, like 10 or 11, maybe.
Man, was that the grocery store? Because I was making $9.50 an hour at the Paxton Record back in the day.
Well, you should have gone to the grocery store, Jeremy, because there's money in the grocery stores.
Journalism pays. That's why we do this thing, right?
Yeah.
All right. Last one we got to get to. And this is a big one because, man, the last couple of years, Joey, explaining blue shirts, explaining scholarship limits, it's a really, really painstaking job. But it's been even more of a painstaking job to obviously do the math for Illinois to get to 85 scholarships, because previously, before the pandemic, you were limited to 25 scholarships per class. This was basically to keep some of these SEC programs from signing 35 guys, right? Houston Nutt back in Arkansas, was there? I forgot where it was, but signed like 37 guys in one class. So the NCAA put in this 25, and 25 times 4 is 100, right? So you should have enough for an 85-man roster. Well, that's before the transfer portal. That's before the one-time transfer rule. And that's before the pandemic the NCAA gave everybody an extra year of eligibility through the pandemic. So all of a sudden we have this bottleneck, and all of a sudden Illinois can't get to 85 scholarship players because they can't add enough players to make up for the players who have left the program. So now the NCAA, for at least 2 years, I think they're going to adapt this long-term because it just makes sense. They just scrapped the scholarship limit. So not just 25 per class. You can sign as many as you want, as long as you stay under 85 scholarships for the season. Joey, this is just common sense at this point. I think the upside is, teams can have 85 scholarships. Everybody's on a level playing field, right? The downside is, you could have somebody sign 40 guys. You could have more coaches pushing players out because they can sign as many as they want. So that wouldn't be a good thing, but I think overall, this is probably a positive for everybody involved, whether it's, college programs, players, and high school prospects. I think high school prospects can benefit from this because there will be more scholarships to be had, and maybe people go and give them to more high school players.
Yeah. One, I don't see there's any way in 2 years the NCAA goes back. I just don't. It's so hard for me to imagine. This is like the one thing they did right. It's so hard for me to imagine they reversed course. Is it going to be a full 85? Maybe you bump that number up to like a 35 or a 40, whatever the case may be. I also need to look, Jeremy. I don't know if you can, let's say you have, can you go over that 85 point at any point? Like, I don't know that you can, in terms of signed letters of intent, which would obviously, I think that was the difference, is as long as by kickoff week 1, you were at 85 or, whatever the date and place was. I don't know that you can go over 85, which would probably alleviate some of those concerns. But yeah, this obviously opens the door for runoff. Like, if you want, let's start with the negative of, there's going to be some people who abuse this, and that is what it is. But you're also going to see, maybe those kids find a place where they're not counted. Like 25 was valuable, dude. That was such a valuable freaking number year over year, and you had to make sure you were getting full value out of that. And if you were a junior or senior who got who's a runoff from somewhere, you don't have as much value as a freshman with 5 years on the clock and 4 to play. You just don't. So, I think that would be, a way to alleviate that a little bit. But it makes a ton of sense, Jeremy. Like, Brett Bielema was beating this drum really since like he walked in the door at Illinois. And I remember thinking, I don't know if that's going to happen, because it makes too much sense to happen. And as we just said, if things make too much sense, they don't happen. But you were seeing high school kids who probably were Power 5 or were FBS talent not getting those opportunities because 25 was full, and you'd have kids sit in the portal forever because 25 was full. Mm-hmm. And that's not fair, really. It's just not. And I do question, I would love for Brett Bielema one day to show us some math about his 85 this year, because I've got some questions about that. But yeah, man, now people have asked, and I think it's worth talking about walk-ons. Like, everyone loves the walk-on story. I don't think that's going away completely.
No.
Otherwise, you're going to be really hard-pressed to build a walk-on program anywhere with any substance. Right? I mean, you would think there's always going to be a 1 or 2 or 3 guys who are going to find their way to a scholarship from a walk-on, especially when you want to zoom in on Illinois. That's kind of the whole coach's deal, right? Like, that's how he ended up here.
Yeah, you're still going to see walk-ons get scholarships. Like a guy, if Isaac Darkangelo turns into a starter, that guy's going to be on scholarship, right? Like Tip Ryman. Yeah, Tip Ryman is on scholarship. Like, he's a scholarship player. He's earned that as one of the important players on the offense. I don't think you're going to see Illinois give 4 or 5 scholarships to walk-ons and one video, right? Because they did that because they couldn't get to 85. So they just gave walk-on scholarships as a reward for a semester or whatever it was. The other thing is sayonara blue shirts. This is something I feel like I've had to explain, understandably so. It's really confusing. It's a loophole in the rule, but for years, Illinois has given blue shirts to players. Brandon Peters, Chase Brown, Jack Badovanak. You got Navion Cargill coming in, Xavier Scott. It's a real benefit to those guys who were supposed to be blue shirts. Now, instead of having to pay their own way for summer school, which for a lot of these guys, they had to take loans out for that, Illinois can now pay. They can now pay those guys to come here. There's nothing keeping them outside of being enrolled from doing team activities, working out with the team. But Illinois couldn't announce them, and they couldn't have their school paid for by Illinois until after their first practice. So those guys can get here. And for Illinois' perspective, I use this story. They wanted to get Noah Matthews, defensive end out of Delaware, but they had to blue shirt him because they had to save a couple spots for transfers to get in here. And Kentucky swooped in, offered him, got him on an official visit. Illinois couldn't get him on an official visit because they didn't have the scholarship space. Kentucky gets him to commit and sign. So now that won't be there. That's maybe a positive for Illinois, but just for a positive for everybody that, maybe now more of those high school guys can get some opportunity. So all those years of talking about blue shirts, maybe it's just a 2-year thing, but I agree with you, Joey. I think there's going to be a rule for the long term, and it makes all the sense in the world.
Can we talk about how stupid it is that teams were dancing around these blue shirts for all these years, and the NCAA was finally like, held on a minute, they're skirting these rules. We better take advantage, or we better find a fix to this. Took all this time, when in reality, like, this blue shirting didn't just come up via the portal. Like, I remember when I first started on the beat was AJ Bush's first year. He was a blue shirt.
And he was committed for how long? And Illinois couldn't give us AJ Bush or talk about AJ Bush until after the first practice, because basically they count for a scholarship. You're mortgaging scholarships, blah, 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 blah. And it was just dumb. It's like, why is this rule? It's like, why can't Brad Underwood talk about Ty Rodgers the day he commits? Right? It's like, why can't we just do
that? I buy that a little bit more. Otherwise, we're going to, for our sake, if you have to talk about every commit and every media availability, we're going to sit there and listen to every coach applaud every 4-yard rushing performance in the high school game or whatever the case may be. I don't want to hear that. I don't have time for that. But the blue shirt is like, oh, it was AJ Bush. You said, nice to meet you. Welcome to Illinois. That's not how this goes. It's stupid. And he could take unofficial visits every day, which was just him going to Rod Smith's office and learning the freaking offense. Like, it was the dumbest thing in the world. And now the NCAA is like, yeah, I'll tell you what, probably got to fix this. Stupid. It was dumb. The transfer portal it probably accelerated the need for it, but it didn't create the need for it. The fix has been needed for a while.
Yeah, it took a while. Well, man, I thought it was a slow week. We had a lot to talk about there, a lot to break down, Joey.
Yeah, Disney scouting report. Okay, I've never been. Give me your top two. Have to do it. Don't say the castle. Obviously, the freaking castle's up there. I also don't like rides. So
you're an Epcot guy. That's where I would go back because I like eating food, drinking beer, and there's a lot of food and drinking beer, and you can basically see the world, Joey. You can walk around the world at Epcot, and fantastic. I would go back there. Like if my wife and I decide to go back there, she wants to go to Universal. We didn't get a chance to go there and go see Harry Potter World. I've never seen the Harry Potters, so I'm not that interested in it, but it looks cool. So I'm going to take her there someday. And I think we'd go back to Epcot for like a long weekend, just so we can drink and eat a lot of food. It's like going to a ball game without, actual baseball being played, just watching people.
Yeah, man, food and beer. I don't need anything else. I don't like rides. I don't find them fun. But yeah, okay. Epcot that's all I need to know. Epcot's number one for non-ride loving.
Yeah, because if you're not going to ride any rides, Joey, then I don't see why you go there. Like I'll do roller coasters. They're fun.
That's why I've never gone.
Yeah, but they're just not my thing. So yeah, I think just Epcot. Epcot's your kind of Disney, and there's nothing wrong with that because that would probably be my number one as an adult in my life.
Okay, Illini Inquirer trip to Epcot. I'm hearing it here. We'll podcast from before. We'll have to do it before because after probably isn't it.
Well, it could be really interesting. There's this thing called drinking around the world at Epcot, which
what a dream.
I don't know exactly what that is, but I think there's like 10 or 12 different countries, and you get a drink from every place, which could be a heck of a day.
Let me know when the flight leaves.
All right, that'll do it for Joey Wagner, for Jeremy Werner. Thank you guys for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Check Illini Inquirer for all the latest. We'll have a bunch on recruiting coming up, a big month for Illinois football. Of course, any of the latest on Illinois basketball and some of these rule changes. We'll have some insight from people at Illinois about how it'll impact them as well. So thank you for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Everybody take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.